Now in general, if we're going to solve equations with square roots, in principle, the first thing you want to do is isolate the square root. You want to get the square root on one side. You can't always do this, but in principle, that's what you'd like to do. Step 2, square both sides. The whole point of squaring both sides is to remove or undo the square root in the problem. Step 3 is to solve it. Sometimes they'll be linear, sometimes they'll be quadratic, and you'll need to factor. Step 4, always check your answers. So let's practice. Let's say we started with the square root of 5x minus 4, all in the square root. You got to be careful with your square root. It's easy to make a mistake when you write things down. Minus 9, which is outside the square root, equals 0. Well, our first step is to isolate the square root, which means that 9, we need to add 9 to both sides to do that. So the square root of 5x minus 4 equals 9. Now it's just like the problems we did earlier. We need to square both sides. The square root of 5x minus 4 squared should equal 9 squared. When you square both sides, you get 5x minus 4 equals 81. Now we're just solving a one variable equation. Add 4 to both sides. So 5x equals 85. Divide both sides by 5. X equals 17. But we have to check. So when we plug this in, 5 times 17 is 85. Minus 4 minus 9 should equal 0. I'm always going back to the original problem. The positive square root of 81 minus 9 should equal 0. The positive square root of 81 is 9, and that is true. Because it checks out, I know my answer is correct. Now some of you are probably debating, like, I don't know that I need to check it. We've never had to. I'm telling you, you should always check them. You've looked at 3 problems so far. Don't start making a pattern based off of 3 examples. Let's try another one. First, let's try the square root of 3y plus 5 plus 2 equals 5. Hit pause and give this one a shot. Well, I hope you hit pause. We need to isolate the square root by subtracting 2 from both sides. So the square root of 3y plus 5 equals 3. If you square both sides, you'll get 3y plus 5 equals 9. Subtract 5 from both sides, so 3y equals 4. Divide by 3, y equals 4/3. And again, we need to check. So this would be the square root of, I'm going to write it out, 3 times 4/3 plus 5 plus 2 should equal 5. Well, 3 times 4/3 is just 4. The square root of 4 plus 5 is the square root of 9. Plus 2 should equal 5. Square root of 9 is 3. 3 plus 2 does equal 5. So it definitely checks out. Y equals 4/3 is my solution. Let's try one more. Again, we now have 4 examples. All the solutions have worked, but don't take that for granted. The square root of 9x minus 2 plus 1 equals 0. Go ahead and give it a shot on your own. Well, if we subtract 1 from both sides to isolate the variable, we get this. If you square both sides, 9x minus 2 would equal positive 1. If you add 2 to both sides, 9x equals 3. Divide by 9, x equals 3/9, and you know to reduce that to 1/3. So it appears our solution is 1/3. If we plug this in, it would be the square root of 9 times 1/3 minus 2 plus 1 should equal 0. Well, 9 times a third is 3. And the square root of 3 minus 2 would be the square root of 1. And it's the positive square root of 1. So 1 plus 1 equals 0. That doesn't work. So our solution, 1/3, doesn't make it true. So there's a couple things about this. We would say that for this problem there is no solution. And 1/3 is said to be an extraneous solution. In our work, we got this as a possible solution, but when we checked it, it did not work. So it's an extra, it's extraneous. Now, one thing that you may have noticed, someone may have noticed this right here. If you did, good job. We have a positive square root equals -1. Now, right here, you know automatically there's no solution. A positive root cannot be a negative number. And if you notice that, you can immediately say no solution. It won't always happen, and you will get extraneous solutions in other circumstances, but that's one thing to be aware of. All right, let me know if you have any questions.